Good morning and welcome to Crack the Mic podcast with Agent of Change DeCorey Davis. And this week's segment is entitled The Lost Poets. And to help me further this discussion, I have an ingenious panel which includes Bayanga Galucha, is an artist, muralist, and exhibitionist, producer, and is currently director of the Ahmad-Dalazi Gallery at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center in Liberty City, Florida. He's also been given such accolades like Best New Gallery in Miami by the Miami Sun Post in 2005. And also is the finalist for the award in 1993 for the National Foundation for Advancement in the Arts. Also, we have Rebecca Butterfly Bonds, a renowned poet who has published 3 self-published books of poetry, 14 studio recorded works of poetry with music, and is a highly known freestyler who has been appreciated by celebrities like Umar bin Hassan of The Last Poets, Nikki Giovanni, Kim, and Tyrese. Also, she's been honored to poetically serenade such celebrities like Charlie Wilson, Fantasia, Keith Sweat, Maxwell, Angela Davis, Betty Wright, and just to name a few. Dr. David Bullock, a gifted genius and social commentator who has appeared on MSNBC's The Rachel Maddow Show, The Ed Show, Sirius XM Joe Madison Show, and is a contributor to the New York Times, syndicated press like the New York Times, US Today, just to name a few. And then last but certainly not least, Isaiah Wallace, motivational speaker and owner of his own security company, Crown Security, and is an executive to the podcast. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
With the abandonment of the First Amendment to the Constitution that suggests freedom of speech for both press, freedoms for both speech and press, I believe that the creativity of the arts, be it spoken, written, or drawn, has been stifled by the call to cancel the culture, which ideally, in my view, constricts the truest expressions that comes for one's soul. Nonetheless, it comes as no surprise when in retrospect, these same atrocities occurred in earlier times with such people like Jean-Michel Basquiat, who was known for his raw gestorial style of painting with graffiti-like images and scrawled text, or James Arthur Baldwin, an acclaimed writer whose various mediums included essays, novels, plays, and poems, or Maya Angelou, whose poems, plays, and books gave ignition to the social changes that occurred during the civil rights movement in America. Or either Nasir Jones, one of hip hop's elite artists whose lyrics has undoubtedly changed the hip hop culture into one of the world's greatest musical genres with his book of rhymes, and that's just to name a few. Now, let me just say this here. In an article published in the Art Bay, it suggests 9 reasons why the arts should not be censored, and I will list it. First, censorship actively discourages creativity. Secondly, censorship takes away your ability to deal with reality and face your problems. Thirdly, censorship, it imprisons. Fourthly, censorship doesn't leave room for questioning. Fifthly, Censorship denies people the chance to experience pleasure. Six, and the sixth reason is censorship is a relic of the past. And then number seven, censorship doesn't work in a free society. And then number eight, art should be free. Number nine, censorship can still happen in a free market, but it is less powerful. Now, let's just step in this discussion. Let me ask the first question, if I may. Do you feel that censorship is a threat to both the First Amendment and the possibility of great art? And if so, why or why not?
Well, thank you. It's so great to be a part of this dialogue one more time. I appreciate the invitation and the conversation. Censorship is a threat to all free expression of any type. And that's the beginning and ending of it. I mean, as it relates particularly to great art or artistic expression, say in these United States where we do have the First Amendment, I think it's interesting to contrast the First Amendment with the way African American life, liberty, and artistic expression has been suppressed since the inception of the country that instituted the First Amendment. So if we add a little nuance to the conversation, even in a free America, African American art has still been censored.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing your sentiment, Dr. Bullock. You want to go ahead, Mrs. Vaughn, Rebecca, you want to go ahead and share your sentiment?
Well, my sentiment, of course, I always see the bigger picture of things, but also dig deeper. So just the word threat alone has three powerful words: heat, hate, and heart. And any artist, when they're displaying their work, whether it be poetry, a visual piece of artwork, or, a song or whatever, they're going to have people that it's going to touch them in the heart. Some people are going to hate it. And then, yes, they're going to get in the heat of things because of the lyrics, or yes, what that visual piece of work, is being presented. And so I agree with the 9 reasons with respect to censorship and that, discouragement, because your mind state is, if I can't paint this mural the way I want to, then what's the purpose? If I can't write this poem and share it the way I'm feeling it, what's the purpose?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to go ahead and share? We welcome that sentiment, Rebecca. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts, Isaiah?
Yes, absolutely. I feel that censorship is definitely a threat to the First Amendment. I think that in a case like Dave Chappelle with his most recent special, where he was canceled over it, to me, that shows that people are unwilling to hear any other narrative or any other opinion besides one that aligns with theirs. And I don't think that whether it be censorship or canceling somebody, that's ever appropriate, because you'll never know how someone else feels if you're unwilling to listen to them. Just in that case, I have many agreements with Mr. Chappelle about how overreaching that certain groups can be because of their special interests and how much power they are able to garner in order to censor him and other people like him. And I don't agree with that at all.
Absolutely. We welcome that sentiment. You want to go ahead, Mr. Punyaga?
Yes. I agree with what everyone shared, but part of what I would like to add to the equation is that we actually censor ourselves far more than we need to worry about censorship, because I think that that's one of the areas that we need to be even more bold in communicating with one another. Just truth telling, So I like to say that we censor ourselves far more, and that too is something that is very dangerous.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll just like to add, if I may, imagine a world without creativity, art, art. Because creativity seeps into every facet of the arts and propels innovation that ultimately provides excellent amusement for those who subscribe to it. I digress on that point. But let me ask the question, if I may. Do you feel that censorship is a threat to both the First Amendment and the possibility of? I just asked the same question. Excuse me.
It's okay. It is a powerful question, so it's okay. Although I'm sitting here, I'm like, he's asked that question already.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel that censorship and the so-called call to cancel culture has stifled creativity in the arts? Go ahead and share your thoughts, Rebecca, on it, please.
Actually, it hasn't stifled, because at the end of the day, no matter who you are, you're going to figure out a way to do something. Because I don't know about you all, but I know when I'm driving out and about and I see particular places where, people's businesses have been, graffitied up. And my mind state is, how did they get over that gate? And how did they get up on top of that roof? So it's not really stifled too much, because no matter what, if you're a rebel like me, you'll still get your artwork out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts on that, Mr. Baganga?
Yes. I too pay attention to how censorship can be used to stifle creativity. But I would also lean, in kinship with the expression that Ms. Butterfly made, in that we actually, I don't see it so much of a threat. And it goes back to what I mentioned before about how we censor ourselves. So when we're censoring ourselves, it's almost like we're muting ourselves, And so I think that the threat is in our philosophy about self-expression.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that, Mr. Binyanga. You want to go ahead, David, Dr. Bullock, and share your thoughts, sir?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think censorship has as its aim, goal, and purpose to censor. Censorship is about censoring ideas, images, artistic expression, political expression, cultural artifacts. And so does censorship hinder at least creativity either before or after it's been produced? Of course it does. Cancel culture is a way to talk about a phenomenon that is not new at all. If you paint Black Christ and hang that picture in a church, you may not be the pastor. Cancel culture, and we don't call it that. If you sing songs with rhythmic qualities and you use words with lyrical velocity, people may call it unholy or not sacred and cancel you as the musical director. And so I think in order to be authentically creative, you have to be courageous. And the sister said it earlier, but you will find yourself standing in the heat.
Absolutely. And you said something, Dr. Bullock, that was absolutely riveting to me, because in so much it was shocking, because when we look at political dialogues, and interesting enough, I just want to make mention of this here, because President Obama was at Stanford University today, in which he, in his address to the student body, and I quote, said that disinformation is a threat to democracy. I'd like to retort that, if I may, and say that censorship is the real threat to democracy. Now, for whatever reasons, President Obama decided to share those sentiments. I can only just, be a bit leery, to say the least, of the reasons behind, seeing that it's ironic, the very platforms that he's admonishing were the very things that got him elected in 2008. So it's kind of sending mixed messages to me. You guys help me with this.
Well, I think we had to be careful talking about President Obama, because when you talk about being courageous and censorship, you will get canceled for talking about the Lord, Big Brother, OG Obama. And so we had to be careful about talking about Jesus' second cousin.
I call it the red tape factor.
So I just want to preface this by saying I do want to respond, but I mean, this is a courageous moment because this is like a sacred theme, Barack Obama, for Black folks especially. But let's be clear. You would think that somebody with the educational pedigree of our former president
Absolutely
would advocate for more critical thinking.
I could agree with you.
As opposed to regulating social media, right? It smacks of some financial agenda to me, because if people know how to think, then you don't have to restrict what they see, hear, and experience, because they have the skills to process it. And so I would think that a free press and a critical thinking citizenry are the necessary conditions of a democracy, not regulating social media.
And I concur. I digress on that point. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts on the question, Mr. Bayanga?
I found myself, spending time often thinking about former President Obama's relationship to the Black community. And I think when I look at that relationship, I do see again how either there's a level of censorship that I think in a way stems from us not engaging him with critical, with a critical ear. I find, because I think that we missed an opportunity to really have like a kitchen table conversation.
Absolutely.
With our families, from a very powerful, position. And so, yes, I think that criticizing President Obama is something that we should have invested more effort in. And but to hear people have fear to say anything critical about him and his policies towards the African American community, I think it's insane. Absolutely insane.
I agree with you. Do you feel that censorship, so-called call to cancel culture, has stifled creativity in the arts?
I think that censorship, and its relationship with cancel culture, I don't think that it has stifled some level of creativity, but I think it stifled those that want to venture into certain areas of communication. But I think for those that have a vested interest in advancing their artistry, cannot in any way, shape, or form see censorship as something that should stifle them, you know. And
Absolutely.
and I find that if we are who we say we are, then we really ought to speak with, you know, with honesty and allow our message to be heard and criticized just as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We accept that sentiment. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts, Isaiah?
Yes. Initially on the first question, my opinion is that censorship is a threat to the First Amendment and the Constitution. But in this question, I kind of have a reasoning for really siding with President Obama. In my opinion, America has a terrorist problem, and it's not the problem of like foreign terrorists, but rather homegrown people who are willing to make bombs or do things that, you know, I don't know if you guys remember, there was even someone who destroyed a communications building in like Texas, and we are trying to figure out, you know, is this a terrorist from overseas? But it turned out to be somebody who's a citizen and somebody who, you know, we probably would have saw. Uh, in my opinion, some people don't have critical thinking skills. Some people don't have good and sound logic. So if you're able to communicate a message of hate to them, and you're in a group like the Proud Boys or the Ku Klux Klan or any of these, you know, sort of terrorist cells, you know, they begin to feed on the population that doesn't have that good logic or critical thinking. So I believe it's appropriate to censor some things, but as I said before, it's not always equitable. It's not always fair. Sometimes people would just censor you because they don't like your opinion. It's not that you're a threat to them physically or financially, but rather they find you unsavory. But I digress.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it
Let me
there.
just let me
Isaiah,
just jump in. I know we got to move on, but I have to jump in. I can't let that be the last word
go
because
ahead, Dr. Bullock.
because in political science courses, we introduce students to a concept that was developed by Oliver Wendell Holmes called the marketplace of ideas.
Powerful.
And the idea is that there is an intellectual marketplace and truth cream rises to the top. If people are critical enough, they will be able to sort through messages, media, images, ideas, thoughts, words, etc., and ascertain and decide for themselves which ones have merit. I think we should be very, very wary of a paternalistic approach to deciding in advance what people should see, hear, or be exposed to, because that is not democracy. That's totalitarianism.
Indeed.
Right. And so we just had to be careful about that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that, Dr. Bullock. All right. Isaiah, you have the next question.
Yes. Thank you, esteemed panel. My question: do you feel that artistic work done by artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat and poets like Maya Angelou serves its purpose, which was to be gestural in its interpretation? And if so, why or why not?
Yes, in looking at Jean-Michel Basquiat's work, I was fond of his work from afar. And it took me quite some time to really understand what his messaging represented. But at the same time, you know, I find myself kind of going back to your statement about censorship, in that if you look at just the whole concept of social media, instead of censorship, we're actually telling people what to think and having others follow these ideas. even if these ideas are not based on anything, especially when they're based on fluff. And so to go back, to what the works of Jean-Michel Basquiat, I think that he came at a time in which he had the freedom to really challenge what was happening in America. But guess what? Because of the way that the art world is constructed, it's really a small group of people that probably did not look like us exploring these conversations amongst themselves. And we really just came along decades after his death to really start to understand what it was that his art's message was truly about. So in essence, I think that when I look at Jean-Michel Basquiat, his work, I think was an opportunity that we missed an opportunity, rather.
You want to go ahead and share your thoughts on that question, Rebecca?
I pretty much feel that they were very impactful and they were trendsetters in their own right and set the tone, for other visual artists to be as expressive as they have been or they are. And as far as with Maya Angelou, to be as expressive, lyrical, and with words. Because again, I can't stress this enough. If you're a rebel like me, you're going to be heard no matter what. And I can use myself for an example. I was booked for an event years ago, and it was for, Secret Service agents, and it was their luncheon. And, we're talking 200 plus people, in the ballroom. And, I spoke my poem. And when it was over, the number of people that said to me, Butterfly, thank you for saying what we can't say because we'll get fired. And wow. Then, of course, the lady who booked me, she said, Butterfly, thank you for coming, but just so you know, you can't come back. I say, it's all good. Because one thing, see, it's like the emphasis on the word censorship, was spoken earlier. That's just it. The censorship comes along with when you're going to present something that is going to open people's minds of the world. Absolutely. They don't want that. They don't want that. In fact, when 9/11 came, I, along with several other poets, we were on the no-fly list because I am one of those poets that I talk through my poetry, telling you stuff that they don't want you to know or they don't want you to read.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts, Dr. Bullock?
Yes, a powerful conversation. I really appreciate the responses that I've heard before me. I mean, this is an interesting question because I really don't know if I can comment on whether or not somebody else's artistic creation served its purpose as they intended. These are very interesting philosophical questions. I think the fact that the creation was created and presented to the world and attained some acclaim, as our brother said before, primarily by people in the dominant culture, not African-American folks, but elite Caucasian Americans, in Basquiat's case in New York and then around the world. But look, he produced it. It got a response. What I would say in closing, though, is that the idea of a painting style where the painter is spontaneously dribbling or splashing or smearing paint onto the canvas, the idea of creating something that awakens an unconscious association in the viewer, the idea of improvisation, See, for me, whether it's Maya Angelou or Basquiat or Miles Davis or John Coltrane or Robert Johnson, the contribution of Negroes in this country has been freedom expressed through improvisational artistic creation. And if art is created to tell the dominant culture that we ascribe, aspire, and will be free, then it has accomplished its purpose.
I echo that sentiment, Dr. Bullock. Okay. All right. So let's just turn the tides for a moment. And I want to ask this next question, but I want to kind of state my intentions in doing so. Because Nasir Jones wrote a critically acclaimed masterpiece album entitled Hip Hop is Dead. And I can only infer that his thoughts were that the luster of artists and their artistic abilities has been sanitized due to the lack of creativity or diversity in styles and in acts. So having said that, I want to ask this next question, if I may. Has poetry and spoken word in general lost some luster as people, for example, in hip hop musical genre, lack individuality or variations in brands or acts? You want to share your thoughts on that, Rebecca?
Personally, being that this is something I have been doing for 25 years, 20 years full time, like this is my bread and butter and how I pay the bills, I don't think so. In fact, it has grown since the inauguration of President Biden when Amanda Gorman delivered her poem. Literally shortly thereafter, spoken word, if I saved a penny for the number of people that came on Facebook, looking for recommendations, baddest poet or baddest spoken word artist, for their events they were having. And if I saved a penny for a number of events that I have attended that were like annual events, gala events, right, that, scholarship funds and stuff like that. And mm-hmm. where at the end of the event, or when I come back to sit at the table of 10, and people are like, oh my gosh, I've been coming to this event for the last 10 years that they've been having it, and I've never seen anything like that. So, and if you watch TV, a lot of the commercials are starting to incorporate spoken word, into the essence or ambiance of the commercial.
Okay. Well stated, Rebecca. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts on that, Dr. Bullock?
Yeah, see, this question right here is so powerful, because this question does not learn from the questions that have come before. If this question were a person, it would be a question without a memory. Because the questions before this question were about censorship. And so all I want to say is this. It is not that there isn't variation in hip hop. It's that there is a corporate media that decides who gets played.
Wow.
It's not that there isn't variation in the pulpit. Preachers are artists too. I don't know why y'all don't give preachers credit. I mean, C.L. Franklin is an artist.
Absolutely.
Jasper Williams is an artist.
Absolutely.
Leo Daniels is an artist.
I give my pastors artists their creativity.
Yeah. So is there not variation in preaching? Just because T.D. Jakes is well known doesn't mean everybody's preaching like him. It just means there was a corporate media
Wow.
that decides who gets heard. And so
That is it.
when money picks winners, sometimes it seems like there is no variation.
Powerful, Dr. Bullock.
Can I
Powerful.
pop you upside your head for that truth? And that pure reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts, Isaiah?
Yes. I can't take anything away from what the brother has just said, but I have a slightly different, internal belief. I believe that the reason it seems as though the luster has been lost, as far as spoken word and in hip hop and music, is just that people see the acclaim, people see the money, people see
Absolutely.
the rewards of it, and they wish to replicate their favorite artists or the thing that they like in order to attain those same things. In my opinion, it's just the lack of people doing it for the love. It's the lack of people doing it to build their skill set or to improve at it. They just want to obtain the things that someone else has.
Bingo.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Isaiah. You want to go ahead,
100%
Mr.
agree with Isaiah.
You want to go ahead, Mrs. Mr. Bayanga?
Yes, I agree with much of everyone's response. When first thinking about the question, my first reaction was to say that there's a level of laziness that I think I noticed in many fields across the arts in general. But I get it. Part of the reason for it is because it's a feast or famine, situation. And
Absolutely.
as it was pointed out before, those that are not in it to advance the art are going to follow what already generates the revenue. And so from that standpoint, corporate America is really just going to reinforce what makes money and will always push that first above all else. But advancing the art really comes right back to us again. And so hip hop is not dead, but mainstream art in music, just mainstream art in general, actually that doesn't exist, to be honest. You can't really say mainstream is artistic. Every now and then you have moments and flashes of artistry in mainstream entertainment, but unfortunately you'll have to dig and look for the artists that are not being promoted by the industries.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Isaiah, you have the next question, sir.
Okay, esteemed panel, what is the biggest challenge an up-and-coming artist may face today?
And that's even with preachers, since you sort of group them into the bunch. Dr. Bullock, you can start us out, please.
Is this the biggest challenge question?
Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to go continue my thoughts. A part B of this is that the biggest challenge is money, resource, finance, support. Look, you can be the worst of the worst and get funded and win acclaim. And you can be the best of the best and be unfunded and live in obscurity and die unrewarded and celebrated. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalistic society. And so I think the biggest challenge is figuring out how to remain authentic, but also find resource.
That's powerful, Dr. Bullock. You want to go and share your thoughts, Rebecca?
I think the biggest challenge is pretty much just trying to stay in radar, because, you know, when it comes to being an artist, whether you're visual, you know, physical, as far as a dancer or a poet or a musician, everyone doesn't have staying power.
Wow.
And, you know, you have artists that they want the crowd and the audience, but they don't know how to, you know, market themselves or do what's necessary to get the crowd there. You know, I have to share this story. It's very short, but it was of a gentleman who was going to be releasing a book. And so he had his book release, you know, at a library, and he was kind of disappointed because only 2 people attended. And so when it was over, you know, he asked his PR person, he was like, "What happened?" And she said, "What happened is nobody knows who you are."
Wow.
See, a lot of artists, you know, they want the VIP status and the perks and the attention that comes with, you know, being an artist and that kind of thing. But you're not going to get that if you're not putting out the work. You know, you have a lot of artists back in the day, you know, when I first started, you know, on the scene and doing it full time, but I had put my work in. You know, they come to the open mic night. This is April. And then in June, they're announcing when they get on the mic to do their piece. Oh, just so you know, next week I'm having my CD release. Really? You've only been doing this 2 months. Who knows you? Like literally, who knows you? You know, because the PR person can only do so much. Because one thing about the world, nobody really comes out just because they heard a name.
Absolutely.
They have to be familiar. And then if they do, that's fine. Because even too with flyers, why do you think people put people's faces on a flyer? Because people don't remember a name, but they remember what you have done. So if they're looking at their flyer and they're like, "Oh, Bayunga? Okay, Isaiah, oh, I'm there."
Right, right.
So that's the biggest challenge, you know, artists who aren't, you know, skillful in branding themselves and learning how to have the staying power.
Powerful, powerful. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts on it, Mr. Bayanga?
Yes, I think the biggest challenge for artists, I want to go back to reiterate Rebecca's comment about staying power. That is one of the things that is super important, because you need to study and live and grow in your craft. And you have to invest so much of you. And when I say so much of you, I'm referring to the time and everything involved in, you know, comprehending, you know, the ins and outs of, you know, craft. But there's another aspect that is connected to the staying power as well, because the staying power is not just for your evolution in the craft, but it also goes to another part, which is we are all CEOs of our own lives. And we can only look at how we evolve in managing where we want our art career to go. And so that sense of focus and purpose, you don't need to know everything day one, but if you have focus and purpose, you will invest the time and resources to learn and develop everything that you need to be successful. Now, it doesn't mean that it's all going to come at, you know, just drop at your feet. No, it doesn't work that way. But, you know, the same way, like if you want to buy a house, you don't just say, I have the money and you want to buy a house today. The research involved in that process helps you get from point A to point B. So even if you don't have the funds for it, you would have learned the process. And so I'd like to bring that back to this idea of, you know, an artist, whatever their artistry is, has to be committed to not just developing their craft, but they have to be committed to being the CEO of their corporation, which is obviously their life. But even if you're represented by others, you know, managed by others, they're still working for you. You're still the CEO of the company, you know, taking on consultants, you know. And so I think that that's something that is truly important as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, this last question I want to ask, and since we all are artists in one way or the other, so I just want to ask this question to the panel. What inspired you to become an artist? You want to share your thoughts, Dr. Bullock?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm really equipped to answer this question. I mean, what inspired me to become an artist? I don't know. I think being inspired to do anything is so mysterious, and I think it's a function of some of what I've seen, some of who I've been around, but mostly what was inside of me that I could not mute, I could not deny, run away from. And I hate to use scripture, but Jeremiah said it. It's like fire shut up in my bones. I said I wasn't going to tell nobody, but I couldn't keep it to myself. I mean, so
I love it.
when it's in you and you can't deny it and be yourself, that's why I am an artist. I can't deny what's in me.
Powerful, Dr. Bullock. You want to go ahead, Rebecca, and share your thoughts?
Well, as far as writing poetry, I was inspired at the age of 10 by the one and only Langston Hughes via his poem, Mother to Son. But as far as being an artist performing, it's what I was born to do. It was what I was born to do. It's like I felt Michael, or I started to understand what Michael said when I watched the movie, which was their life story, American Dream. And, where he expressed, this is not verbatim, that, there's something that happens when he gets on that stage. It's like something comes over him and it's a whole different world and it's magical. And so as time moved on and me, gracing stages of all kinds, that's how I felt. That's how I feel. And I think of people through the years that would ask me, Butterfly, you don't never get scared? And I tell them, no. I say, I married the stage and divorced the audience.
That's powerful. Real powerful. Thank you for that, Rebecca. You want to go ahead and share your thoughts? Isaiah, as a motivational speaker, what has inspired you with your art, being an artist?
Oh, wow. Motivational speaker. I was thinking about, because I like art, I like animation, and I've been writing a lot of scripts, I guess, since I was a little boy, wanting to have my own show. The thing that inspired me to want to become an artist and to express myself in any medium, I'd have to say it was a little thing called Power Rangers. I remember when I was a little boy, they had gotten to like 4 seasons, and now they made, I guess, my dreams and a lot of my people I knew from college and other people who loved the Power Rangers, they felt the same way as me, because at that 4th season, it became Turbo, and they injected a real life little kid to become a Power Ranger. So now they have the grown people and they have that kid, and that kid always pulled me in. It made me feel as though I could see the world of Power Rangers, how it would be if I were to be a Power Ranger. And, when I transpose that onto myself, I want people to be able to see the world through the eyes of a Black person. I want people to be able to experience fantasy and, drama the ups and downs of a story, the climax. I want everything to be able to be experienced through the eyes of an African American individual. I feel like that would bring me closer to feeling humanized, in the face of all of these things that are saying otherwise.
Powerful, Isaiah. You have the last word, Mr. Benyaga.
I think that I was inspired by many of things, but if I may first respond to something that I just heard now, which is regarding the Power Rangers, I wonder if the Power Rangers were never created, what would have taken the place of inspiration?
I'm not really sure. I think it would have to be a book because, I wanted to be a writer for so long. And I thought that, by the time I was 13, I would have my novel finished. But that Power Rangers came out, oh my God, and I threw away that novel transcript and I started trying to write a show.
Well, for some reason, in listening to you, I'm brought back to a gentleman that inspired. There's so many people that inspired me, but this one particular gentleman is part of a short list of truly great inspirations, and that one person is Eric Monti. He's the one that is he wrote Coolie High. He created what was the Jeffersons, Good Times. Even though we know that Peter, the gentleman, I forget his name, that got all the credit for all those programs, but Eric Monti created stories about us that helped me as an immigrant from Congo, from Kinshasa. I found myself looking at another interpretation of the Black experience. While coming from the Congo, there's so much that was all too familiar for me in America. And so filmmaking, writing, how about films that were inspired by art itself? Because if we look at films like The Godfather, even the way those scenes are captured, they are in turn inspired by art, old paintings. Life inspires me. I began drawing at a very young age, and I recall as clearly as yesterday, the very first sense of mastery for me came at drawing a little bird. And when I saw that I was able to draw it like my older cousins, it really inspired me and pushed me to keep exploring what else I could draw. And it's from there that I found myself trying all sorts of things. If it wasn't drawing, it's also creating, and I remember making models out of cardboard, building boomerangs. It didn't loop back around, but it flew far enough, And so it's like, we're all artists and engineers, and, this is innately in all of us. Unfortunately, we're discouraged at various points in our lives, to not pursue the very things that make us all artists at our core.
Unfortunately, we are out of time for this week's segment, The Lost Poets. And I'd like to thank my ingenious panel, Dr. David Bullock, Rebecca Butterfly Bonds, Isaiah Wallace, and Bianca Galucha. But before we leave, I'd like to leave this thought from an unknown source. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Creative isn't the way I think, it's the way I like to live. A work of art is a world in itself, reflecting senses and emotions of the artist's world. You were born to be an original. Listen, like and share this video and YouTube channel. This is your Agent of Change signing off for this week's segment, Lost Poets on Crack the Mic.